What's going on, YouTube? This is Newo, and I am a minimal techno artist from Los Angeles, focusing today on how I made the lead synthesizer for my record Storage and Disposal, which is available now on my new album, Fake Techno. Link for that is in the description. I highly recommend you check that out. Now, this is somewhat of a part 2 video because I previously made a video showing how I did all these drums here for the same record. I didn't really share too much more than that, like the arrangement or anything. I just kind of focused on how you could make a groove using 99% stock Logic samples and instruments. And this video kind of piggybacks on that in the sense of the lead synthesizer is also 100% stock Logic. I mean, you're seeing the processing on it right here. It's literally just the ES2, the pedal board with a little bit of processing on that, a sidechain compressor, and then EQ with like barely any stuff on there. And I should note, obviously, this is not the final version of the record. It's the final version of like the musicality in terms of arrangement and, you know, things going on with the MIDI and stuff like that. But I mixed this record analog on an API console, just as I do all of my other records. So a lot of the mix decisions, things like how the kick drum was processed, what kind of compression was added to the lead synthesizer, EQs and stuff like that, that all happened in the studio. But that's not why we're here today. I'm not really focusing on the mix. We're focusing on how I made the lead synth. And the lead synth is very straightforward. If you've heard this record, you know it has like a kind of a tension, consistent tension building ARP. And it's actually really simple. So that ARP is something that I played around here with the arpeggiator plugin in Logic, and I just, you know, changed some knobs, changed some buttons, and came up with stuff that I liked, which then you can translate into MIDI. So I translated that initial ARP that I liked into MIDI, and throughout the arrangement of the record, I kind of took that initial 16 bar loop, and it changes ever so slightly so that it's never the exact same thing. So sometimes, I mean, the first part, it kind of stays more consistent just to have the mix in, but slowly it starts playing different notes in that scale, and it starts to randomize a little more just to keep things interesting. And it really complements the actual instrument itself. So this instrument here is the ES2 synthesizer in Logic, and it's one of the legacy instruments in Logic. It's not one of the newer ones like Alchemy. I mean, I know Alchemy's been around for a long time, but I started using Logic in like 2010. So Alchemy didn't exist back then. But just for sake of example, let me go and open up a new instrument track with the ES2. And what I did is I started with this techno chords preset. And this is what that sounds like. So it has that sort of dead mousey, you know, electronic, like detuned sound to it. So I started with that preset, and I had some MIDI going, but obviously I didn't want to just use the preset stock. Like I changed some things. So I changed what's going on with these actual oscillators and the waveforms that are playing. There's a lot of automation. A lot of that automation was done in latch mode. So the way that I've lately kind of been making music is getting my drums down in a way that I really like, that I really can groove to, and then just loosely coming up with an arrangement. So, you know, like 32 bars and then a little break before 64 bars, you know, and then like a kind of later on in the record, a longer breakdown. And there's really no rules to this. Sometimes I'll use reference tracks. Sometimes I'll just go by feeling. And in this case, I just went by feeling. And if you've watched any of my other videos, I've said this before, music is just a feeling. And if it feels good, you got to rock with it. So that's what I did. I just had this preset, and I had this arpeggiator, and I slowly, you know, over time started modifying the preset. And opened up all these different lanes of automation. So things are changing, such as the analog, which is over here, the detune on the synth. The glide is changing, which really adds some like note um, sliding notes to the feeling. The waveforms of certain oscillators are changing at certain times. It's changing. Let's see. Yeah, oscillator 3 waveform. Obviously, the cutoff is a big part of both this record and the arrangement. And so, kind of like as you get to this big chunk of the record before the breakdown, the synth goes more full throttle, opens up quite a bit. Things like the resonance, low pass frequency modulation, and that really changes a lot of the characteristics of this synthesizer. Um, yeah, it's all about automation, and that's really just the key part of this record is playing automation, not drawing it in manually. Drawing, I mean, except for some of this stuff, but most of it is drawn in um, by feeling in latch mode and doing multiple passes as well. So, for example, here. So what I was trying to do is in those parts on the MIDI, like where it'll play more of a chord or something. I was trying to have the automation complement that. So it took a couple tries of basically writing in the notes manually that I felt would work and keeping them random from I guess loop to loop, or I don't know what the term would be, but these notes at the turnaround, they never play the exact same, which just keeps the record more interesting. So those combined with the automation play like being played, and it's just me, holding it and drawing it in like manually. That combined with the notes changing, it just gives it a little more of a live feeling. And that was kind of the goal of this, is to keep the drums super consistent and super tight and locked in, and then have the synth be kind of the main character in this short film, if you will. Um, so the other thing too that I love about the ES2 is it just, if you dial it in right, it doesn't need that much mixing. Like, to be honest with you, when I was at the mixing stage of this record, it was just a lot of complementing what was already there. And that's a big um, approach that I've been doing lately, is like not overthinking it, kind of intentionally underthinking it and being like, how simple can I actually get this, to the point where I'm making mixed decisions so early on in the process that it's the mix decision is based on like the sample or the synthesizer. So like I don't know if that makes sense. Like, basically I'm trying to choose sounds that are, they already fit like a puzzle piece, and I don't have to change them that much. I think fighting the flow is something that can be detrimental to music. And other than that, it's just some effects, and these effects are nothing special. They're just from the stock loop library, but they fit for where they needed to be. Just a real simple kind of lead in to the quote unquote drop. I mean, there's not much of a drop, but another thing I should note is the arrangement on this record was meant for like DJ sets. So it's kind of like a glorified DJ tool, this record. It's something that you can layer in very nicely with either some other hi-hats, some other tracks that have more vocal samples, some tracks that have different kick drums, because the kick is kind of soft on this, and I did that intentionally so that you could both layer it in nicely, but also the synthesizer is doing most of the work. I'm part of the reason I made this album called Fake Techno is I'm just so sick of like the same style of like soulless, hardcore techno with the kick drum is so distorted and blown out. It's like there's no flavor to anything else. And I was trying to show people that techno is so much more than just like a heavy pounding kick drum. It's so much more than just the warehouse. And yeah, so anyways, if you have any questions about this record, please let me know in the comments. I will put the actual record in the description. Definitely go check that out. Check out the album and follow me on Twitter at TapNewo and follow me on Instagram at TapNewoTechno. Have a great rest of your day. Oh, and please subscribe.